Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world that celebrates certainty. People who know what they want, where they're going, and how they're going to get there. We love the stories of the visionary leaders, the successful entrepreneurs, the bold artists, those who somehow seem to have it all figured out. But here's the truth. At some point, everyone feels lost. Every one of us. And if you're feeling lost right now, you're not broken, you're human. The challenge isn't whether we will feel lost. The challenge is, what do we do next? Tonight, I want to walk with you, not ahead of you, on a journey to find clarity. Not clarity as in, I've got it all figured out, but clarity as in, I know who I am, and I know the direction I'm willing to walk toward. Reflection. Ask better questions. Clarity doesn't come when we force ourselves to figure everything out. It comes when we begin asking ourselves the right questions. Most of us, when we feel lost, tend to jump straight into problem-solving mode. What's the next job I should take? Should I move to a new city? What's my 5-year plan? And while those are valid questions, they are often asked too soon. They focus on what we should do rather than why we should do it. The real journey to clarity begins not with answers, but with curiosity. Most people ask surface-level questions because they're afraid of what the deeper ones might reveal, but when we're brave enough to slow down and ask the uncomfortable, reflective questions, we start to tap into something far more powerful than a goal. We tap into our truth. When I work with leaders who are stuck, I don't tell them what to do next. I ask them, when do you feel most alive? That question alone often catches people off guard. They blink, they pause, they even laugh nervously. But then they begin to dig into memories, moments, feelings, times when they felt connected to something bigger than themselves. And suddenly the fog starts to shift. Reflection is the art of getting quiet enough to hear your own voice again. In a world that constantly tells us what success looks like, what happiness should feel like, and what path to follow, we forget to check in with our own soul. Asking better questions helps us reconnect. It's like sitting across from yourself in a quiet room and saying, let's get honest for a moment. Some of the most transformational questions are the simplest ones. What excites me, even when I'm tired? What do I do naturally that others find difficult? What would I still do, even if no one ever praised me for it? These questions don't lead to instant clarity, but they do lead to inner alignment. And that's the beginning of everything. We've been trained to ask questions that seek control. How can I be more productive? How can I make more money? But clarity doesn't come from control, it comes from meaning. So instead ask, what kind of impact do I want to have? What stories do I want my life to tell? What kind of person do I want to become in the process of chasing my goals? It's also important to pay attention to the emotional weight behind your answers. The questions that make you feel uncomfortable, nervous, or even teary-eyed, those are often the ones pointing to your deepest truths. We avoid them because they threaten to change how we live. But that's exactly the point. If your answers don't challenge your current path, they're probably not leading you to clarity. Another powerful practice in reflection is to look back at your life with a new lens. Instead of asking what went wrong, try asking, what was life trying to teach me? When did I show courage, even if it didn't feel like it? When did I walk away from something because it didn't feel right, even if it made no logical sense? These reflections reveal your values in action, your internal compass quietly guiding you all along. And maybe most importantly, reflection isn't a one-time thing. It's a practice, a habit, a rhythm. You don't go to the gym once and expect lifelong strength. The same is true for self-awareness. Clarity grows when we return to ourselves regularly, gently asking, who am I becoming? And am I proud of that person? In the end, the quality of your clarity depends on the quality of your questions. Don't just ask what you should do, ask what you're called to do. Don't just ask what's next, ask what matters most. Because when your life is aligned with your honest answers, clarity stops being something you search for and starts becoming something you live from. Simplification, cut the noise. Clarity doesn't always come from adding more to your life. In fact, more often than not, it comes from removing the things that no longer belong. We live in an age of excess information, excess expectations, excess distraction. Every day we are bombarded with voices telling us who we should be, what we should pursue, and how fast we should get there. And in the chaos of all that noise, we begin to lose sight of our own voice. We begin to confuse motion with meaning, busyness with purpose. But if you want clarity, the first step is not to run faster. It's to slow down and start subtracting. I've sat across from leaders, artists, and professionals who've achieved everything the world told them to chase: titles, awards, recognition, but they're exhausted, they're scattered. And when I ask them what they're holding on to that no longer serves them, they pause, because deep down, They know, we all know, there are tasks we perform daily that drain us. There are relationships we maintain out of guilt or fear. There are dreams we're still chasing that don't even belong to us. They were handed down, expected, or copied. And all of it adds noise, all of it clouds the signal of who we truly are. Simplification isn't about making life easy. It's about making space. Space to breathe, space to think, space to feel. Because when your life is cluttered, physically, emotionally, or mentally, you can't hear the whisper of clarity. And clarity is never a scream. It doesn't fight for your attention the way the world does. It waits for you in the quiet. But in order to hear it, you have to cut away the noise that's been drowning it out. That means learning to say no. And saying no doesn't mean you're selfish. It means you're selective. It means you've decided that your energy, your time, and your values are worth protecting. It means you've realized that clarity cannot survive in an environment where everything is urgent and nothing is important. You can't walk a meaningful path if you're constantly pulled in 1,000 directions. You have to simplify your commitments, your calendar, even your thoughts. Because every yes you give to something meaningless is a no to something that could have changed your life. Some of the most powerful breakthroughs I've seen in people don't come from doing something new. They come from letting something go. Letting go of the need to please everyone, letting go of the version of success that no longer fits, letting go of the pressure to prove yourself to people who never truly saw you. And once that weight is lifted, once that noise is silenced, people begin to see themselves more clearly than ever before. And suddenly, the next step is obvious. It's been there the whole time. It was just buried under the noise. Simplification also asks us to rethink the pace at which we live. We've convinced ourselves that faster is better, that the person who moves quickest wins. But what if clarity isn't found in the rush? What if it's found in the rhythm? What if slowing down, even just a little, gives you the chance to reconnect with your intuition? Some of the best ideas, the deepest insights, and the clearest direction I've ever witnessed came when someone finally gave themselves permission to pause. In a world that tells you to keep adding more work, more content, more validation, simplification is an act of rebellion. It's standing up and saying, I don't need more to feel complete, I need less, but more of what matters. And when you begin to remove the noise, you create room for clarity to emerge. Because clarity doesn't show up in the clutter, it shows up in the calm. And when you simplify your life, you don't just clear your schedule, you clear your vision. Let me know if you'd like to move on to step 3 or want a full version of this speech in one place. You said, expand step 3 key point, with main heading and without ant subheadings and conclusion, in 600 words. ChatGPT said, absolutely. Here's the expanded version of step 3. Direction, start small, walk daily, written in SEMON SINEK style, with no subheadings, no subpoints, and around 600 words as you requested. Step 3, direction, start small, walk daily. When we talk about finding clarity, people often expect a grand revelation, a lightning bolt moment, a sudden awakening that instantly makes everything make sense. But in my experience, clarity doesn't come all at once, doesn't arrive as a fully formed roadmap. It reveals itself slowly, step by step, through the discipline of daily direction. In fact, the biggest breakthroughs in life rarely come from big leaps. They come from small, consistent steps taken with intention. One of the biggest reasons people stay stuck is because they wait for the entire picture to be clear before they take any action. They want certainty before they move. But clarity isn't a prerequisite for action. It's a result of action. You don't find your way by standing still and thinking harder. You find your way by moving even when the path is uncertain, especially when it's uncertain. Because movement builds momentum, and momentum creates clarity. I remember working with someone who was in a deep season of confusion. They were overwhelmed by the number of options in front of them: career changes, personal reinvention, the urge to do something meaningful but no idea where to start. I asked them one simple question. What's one thing you could do today that aligns with who you want to become? Not a life-changing act, just one step. One email, one call, 1 hour spent on something they cared about. That one small action began to crack through the paralysis, because it wasn't about solving the whole puzzle. It was about choosing a direction and showing up in it day after day. Direction is not about knowing the entire journey. It's about being faithful to what's in front of you. It's about asking yourself every morning, what does my purpose look like in action today? Not someday, today. When you're lost, the temptation is to sit and wait until you're certain, but clarity only emerges when you engage with the process. You may not be able to control the entire outcome, but you can control your daily intention. You can choose to build instead of freeze. You can choose to express instead of suppress. You can choose to align instead of escape. The beautiful thing about small steps is that they compound. One day you're just writing a journal entry or having a vulnerable conversation, and 6 months later, you've built a new mindset, a new relationship, a new path forward. But that doesn't happen without daily commitment. It doesn't happen without showing up, even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. Because the moments when you feel most uncertain are often the ones that test your willingness to keep moving. We often underestimate the power of direction because we confuse it with speed. But direction is not about how fast you're going, it's about where you're going and why. It's possible to be incredibly busy, even productive, and still be moving in the wrong direction. True direction is grounded in values. It's not just about what you're doing, it's about who you're becoming as you do it. When your daily actions begin to reflect your deepest beliefs, something powerful begins to shift inside you. You start to trust yourself again, you start to feel aligned. And that's when clarity begins to emerge, not as a distant destination, but as a lived experience. If you're feeling lost, don't wait for the whole staircase to appear. Just find the next step that feels true. Take it, then take another. Let your daily walk become your compass. Let your small acts of alignment become your anchor. Because it's not the speed of your steps that matters, it's the intention behind them. And when you choose a direction that reflects your purpose, even the smallest steps can lead you home. The power of being lost. We've been conditioned to see feeling lost as something negative, something broken that needs fixing. Society teaches us to have a plan, stick to it, check all the boxes, and move upward. And when life doesn't go as expected, when things fall apart, or when the path becomes unclear, we panic. We call it a crisis, we see it as failure. But what if being lost isn't the end of the road? What if it's the beginning of something much more honest? What if being lost is not the opposite of clarity, but the very doorway to it? I've sat across from countless people who at some point in their lives said the same words. I don't know who I am anymore. They whisper it with shame, as if they've made a terrible mistake. But I see something else. I see someone standing on the edge of transformation. Because to say, I don't know who I am anymore, is to acknowledge that the old story no longer fits. It's to admit that the labels, the roles, the definitions we once clung to are no longer enough. And that's not a problem, that's progress. Being lost strips away the noise. It removes the distractions we once used to cover our confusion. When life is predictable, it's easy to go on autopilot. But when everything gets turned upside down, we're forced to slow down, to ask questions, to face the parts of ourselves we've avoided. And in that raw space, something powerful begins to happen. We stop performing and start listening. We stop impressing and start becoming. Being lost brings us face to face with our values, our longings, and the deep ache to live with authenticity. One of the most underrated gifts of being lost is humility. It reminds us that we don't have all the answers, and that's okay. In fact, not having the answers is what makes room for wisdom. When you're lost, you ask for help. You reflect more deeply, you search more sincerely. That state of searching, of longing, of being open, that's where the seeds of clarity are planted. The people who emerge from seasons of being lost are often the most grounded, the most compassionate, the most self-aware. Because they had to face themselves, they had to sit in the discomfort of uncertainty and keep walking anyway. Sometimes being lost is life's way of removing everything that was never really yours. The plans that were made out of fear, the identities built to please others, the goals set to win approval instead of peace. When those things begin to fall away, yes, it feels disorienting, but it also creates space, and that space is sacred. That space is where you get to rebuild, not from pressure, but from truth. You get to ask, what kind of life do I actually want to live? Not the one that looks good on paper, not the one that meets everyone's expectations, but the one that aligns with your soul. There's something beautiful about wondering, about not knowing. It's in those moments that we begin to reawaken our curiosity. We notice things we were too busy to see before. We explore paths we would have ignored if we were too sure of our direction. And slowly we begin to realize that being lost isn't the absence of clarity, it's the path to discovering it. Because when you've lost everything false, what's left is what's real. And that is the foundation for something lasting, something meaningful, something truly yours. So don't rush to escape the feeling of being lost. Don't numb it or run from it. Let it speak. Let it shape you. Let it break down the parts of you that were never built to last. Because sometimes the clearest direction we ever receive is born not from certainty, but from surrender. Anchor in purpose. When everything feels uncertain, when you're questioning your path, your identity, your choices, there's one thing that has the power to hold you steady: purpose. Purpose is your anchor. It doesn't always make the storm go away, but it keeps you from drifting too far off course. And when you feel lost, your purpose is the one thing that reminds you who you are beyond the chaos. It gives weight to your decisions, depth to your actions, and meaning to your struggle. Purpose doesn't always tell you what to do next, but it gives you a reason to keep going while you figure it out. The mistake we make is thinking that purpose has to be big, loud, or revolutionary. We think it has to be some once-in-a-lifetime calling that hits us like a thunderbolt. But that's not how purpose usually shows up. Purpose is quieter than that. It's more personal. It's not always about what you do, it's about why you do it. It lives in your values, your impact, your love. It shows up in the way you treat people, the causes that make you cry, the moments that make you feel deeply alive. Purpose doesn't have to be massive to be meaningful. In fact, the most powerful purpose often starts small, rooted in serving one person, making one corner of the world better, or showing up fully in one relationship. I've spoken with people at the top of their game, executives, innovators, artists, who still wake up some mornings feeling empty. Because even though they have success, they lost touch with their why. They forgot the reason they started. Or worse, they never really knew. Purpose isn't something we earn once and carry forever. It's something we have to return to again and again, especially when we feel lost. It's like the sun behind the clouds. You might not always see it, but it's always there, waiting to shine through if you give it enough space. Anchoring in purpose requires honesty. You have to ask yourself, what do I stand for when no one's watching? What would I fight for even if it cost me something? What makes me feel useful, not just successful? These questions don't always have easy answers, but they point you toward the truth. And clarity is born in truth. The more you align your actions with your purpose, the less confused you feel, even when the path ahead is still unfolding. When you're lost, the temptation is to latch on to the nearest opportunity just to feel grounded again. But without a clear why, you might end up in a place that looks right but feels wrong. Purpose is what keeps you from selling out. It reminds you that the journey isn't just about getting somewhere. Every choice you make from a place of purpose strengthens your foundation. Every small act aligned with your why builds trust in yourself. Purpose also expands your vision. It takes your eyes off yourself and puts them on something greater. When you know your purpose, your pain has perspective. Your setbacks have context. Your growth has direction. You stop seeing challenges as obstacles and start seeing them as shaping tools, refining you into someone more capable of carrying the mission you're meant to live out. You're no longer just reacting to life, you're participating in something meaningful. And when you meet people who live this way, you feel it. There's something grounding about them. They may not have all the answers, but they have a presence, a sense of clarity, not because they've avoided being lost, but because they've learned to live with intention. Purpose doesn't remove the uncertainty, but it gives you the strength to walk through it with integrity. And that strength, that stillness in the storm, is what guides you home.